There we go. Now the recording starts. And I share my screen. Okay, now you can probably already see what I was working on earlier. This is, by the way, not made by me. It's I did it on something called Adobe Fuse, where which basically helps you do these ready-made models. So there are some plus points in using the Adobe Creative Cloud. Okay, I'll just check if there are people still coming. I guess not. So if you notice that there is somebody who's waiting and not getting in, then just tell me. There's the participants. Oh yeah, Laura is still coming. Okay, I'll let her in before we start. Okay, hello Laura. You just made it. All right, but I guess we can go on with Blender. So I will create a whole new document for us. And you all did find Blender. You had no problem with that. Yeah. Blender.org. It's updated quite often. Well, sometimes not that often, but maybe once or twice a year you get an update. And sometimes there are these beta versions, like right now I think there's a 2.83 beta version, and also a very experimental version of 2.9. It was a big thing when 2.8 came out last year. But anyway, let's start with a new general. Okay, I won't save this one. Okay, here we go. So we are in a 3D space now, which is of course not a real 3D space, but made by the computer. It's us, real people, who are in the real 3D or 4D space. Anyway, that's irrelevant. So where should I start? So we have this cube that is there already. And what else do we have in the scene? We can see here from the scene collection that we have a camera over there. We can look at the cube from the camera over here by clicking on the toggle camera view. There's a button. Also, you can see that the shortcut is 0 if you have a numpad on your computer. So this is the camera view. By going into the scene and moving my computer, this controller pad a little bit, I can get away from the camera view. I can also lock the camera view if I want to, but now I didn't want to lock it. Then we have a light, which is this one over here. And we have the cube itself. And you notice that whenever I click on something, then the information here changes. Like here we have the location information, the original scale information, and other kinds of interesting things. Also, if we go here to material properties, this side tab or side window, then we can see that the cube already has been assigned a material. This happens when you open up Blender and there's this ready-made cube. It does have a material already attached to it. If you create new things, then they won't have any materials. Then there's the light, and you can also change the properties of the light. So note how I got the light tab here as I switched the light on. And I can change the light to something else than the point light, to, for instance, the sun spots or area lights. But you notice that whatever I do here, it doesn't much seem to affect anything. It's because the viewport shading is here in solid mode. So here are 4 modes. And by the way, you can find these same kinds of modes also in other 3D programs, such as Autodesk Maya, which is also very popular. We also have some courses on Maya. Also, Autodesk Max is quite popular. My youngest son, he likes to use SolidWorks right now because he learned it at school a little bit. But, well, SolidWorks is for engineering and architects and people who need to have really very precise measurements and things. You can do that here too, but it's not quite as well solid. This is a program that is used for slightly different things. So the viewport shadings, if I go here to wireframe, then you can see, well, yes, it's a wireframe. And then what else do we have here? We have the material and preview. So now I can see a little bit of something. So for instance, if I change the color of this, base color of this object here, now I'm again in the material mode, and I clicked and I selected the cube. Now I can change the base color, and now in the material mode, I can actually see it. This is quite simple to use, as you can see. Then there's a 4th mode called the rendered version. And now you can see that it's rendering the shadows a little bit better than in the earlier mode. There are 2 rendering engines, well, at least 2 rendering engines here. And you can find information about that over here in this tab. It's called Render Properties. So it pays to go and see each one of these tabs and see what they have. Anyway, the render engines are visible here. Eevee is the new one, the fast one, which many people use. Then if you want to do some really sophisticated stuff, but do with a cost that the rendering is lower, then there's the Cycles engine. Yes, there's a third engine called Workbench, but I've actually never used it, and I know nobody who does use it. So a little bit of history. Blender used to be a game engine. That's why there's still, well, parts where you can affect the engine by coding. But since this newest version, the game engine has been scrapped away, so it's not actually there. But there's still a physics engine, which is nice for many things, like making water and wind. Yeah, there's also particles. So Blender can be used very, it's a versatile program. But now we are in the Eevee engine. And by the way, if you want to quickly go between these shading spaces, you can just click Z on your keyboard. Then you find this C or Z. So now you can go to rendered, wireframe, material preview, and solid mode. Usually people do a lot of basic modeling in the solid mode, but these days the Eevee rendering engine is so quick that I've started using just the Eevee, nothing else. It's weird. Okay, so I'll now stay in Eevee. Okay, so next thing would be how we have these things here in 3D space. How do we move them, and how do we manipulate them? So one way of moving them would be, of course, by clicking here on these so as you can see, if this acts also as a slider. I'm now pressing my mouse down and just sliding it, and I can move stuff. Okay, I'll go back with Command and Z, or Control Z if you are using a Windows. Okay, the other way of moving it is by clicking G on the keyboard. That gives you free movement. I click G, and now I can move it anywhere, like this. It's a little bit lagging now, probably because of the Eevee, and also probably because I'm screen sharing. So, but it's not very precise to move things like that. I think you agree with that. So what I can do also on the keyboard is just to click G and then give the axis on which I want the movement to happen. Like here you have 3 axes. There's this Z axis, which goes vertically. Then there's the horizontal axis, the X axis, and the Y axis. I think you've come across these in some places. So I can just click, for instance, G and Y. And now it's moving it. And I don't know if you can see it, but on the lower half of the screen, it's now showing the commands that I can use. This is new because before this version of Blender, the program didn't like to help the user much. And I think it's very nice that things are there to help us with Blender, because there's so much that is hidden. There are other ways of moving things and also resizing them. I could click here, for instance, on this transform tool, and now I get this here. And I have to say, I use this a lot now that it's possible. So it's like a multi-tool for all kinds of manipulations that you can do. You can just grab an axis here if you want to and move it, or you can grab a rotation axis and rotate the thing. It's also nice, and so on. And these ones are for resizing. Yeah, by the way, the keyboard command for scaling is S. So you can also scale by the keyboard command to a certain axis. So if I click on S and Z, then this is what I can do. I'm planning to make a tabletop out of this, by the way. So I'll make this a little bit flatter. And I will also make it longer. I want to make this long sort of table. So maybe I'll tell at this point what I'm planning to create here now. I want to make a table and show you some basic things in Blender, but by creating that table from several different basic shapes, basic meshes, as they are called. Then after that, I want to make a creature, maybe something that resembles a dog, and then show you basic modeling techniques and also tools. But they are mostly techniques. There's like just a couple of things that you need to know, and then you're good to go with modeling. It's more like you need to have a certain thinking mode on when you're modeling. But let's go to that bit by bit. Anyway, what I used to think was really not very handy in Blender was that it was the navigation in the space until I found out how to do it. And I would say that if you are on a Mac, then you have then your life is easier if you than with a PC. But well, some of my work colleagues who also like to use Blender, they think the exact opposite way. They think it's easier to use Blender with the Windows. So anyway, I'm using this now on a MacBook where I don't have a mouse, because I don't like using a mouse. It's not good ergonomically, at least not for my hands. So I like to use this other, what's it called, this control pad that is in the middle. Well, most PC laptops have that too. But the thing is that you can use Blender, you can orientate yourself in Blender quite nicely with the Mac control pad, but with a PC you need a mouse to do it. So for instance, you can use the mouse mid button for zooming in and out like this. And what I'm doing, I'm using the pinching in and out motion that's familiar for Mac users for any kind of zooming. Also, I'm just using the again the motion that goes up and down, like the swishing motion on my pad to do this. With a mouse, you need to use, I think it was the right mouse button that you need to use for this. Anyway, there's one more motion that is important here, and that is going from side to side, or panning, as it's called in film language. So again, with a Mac, you do it by clicking the Shift button and then clicking up and down. So you have to keep Shift pressed when you do this. And with a PC, you press, if I remember correctly, you press the mid mouse button down and then move things. So test these things on your own until you're good with them, or until you're comfortable with them. That was what I was supposed to say. Anyway, so now I've shown how to move around. Let's create a new object. And for creating a new object, if I don't want it to be part of this object directly, I need to click away from this one. So I click once away, so now nothing is selected. By the way, if I click A on the keyboard, I can select everything, like just A, not Command A, not Control A, just A. And to select nothing again, or deselect everything, I click away. But how to add things? Well, there are, again, 2 ways. Probably 3, but I know only 2. Anyway, there's this add menu, which you can find over here under this button. And it's also showing you the shortcut, which is Shift A, which I use a lot. Somehow, this is a little bit like Photoshop or Illustrator in that you get familiar with the keyboard shortcuts really quickly and then you use them. It happens with other 3D modeling software too, with, for instance, Maya. Anyway, Shift and A, and you can see that there's a whole lot of different families of objects that you can create. Here's also, you can create a new light, and you can create these reflection surfaces. That's new, by the way. There's camera. I have added a couple of things here because there are these things called add-ons. So when you try this, your add menu, you might not see all the things that you can see here now. Yeah, there's even a speaker. And there's the force field that I think I mentioned, like wind and stuff. Anyway, metaphors are also interesting. And we're going to talk briefly about armature at the end of this lesson. Anyway, what I want to create now is a mesh object. And we'll see quite soon what mesh objects are made of. So we already have one cube there. So let's create something else now. Maybe a cone would be fun. I'm thinking still about the table and what the table would be standing on. Cylinder could be one possibility, but I think I'll go with a cone now. Oh yeah, by the way, you can also bring images here, like 2D images, and animate them. So you can make 2D animation in this program as well as 3D animation. Blender is actually quite amazing in many ways. And you can edit film. Okay, so now that I've added this cone, sorry, I'll go one step back. There was something I wanted to show. I'll add the cone. So before I click on anything here, I can see this basic information about the cone here in the left-hand corner. So if I click open this window, it will give me some options about what kind of cone this is. For instance, for instance, the vertices, like this is basically how much information there is in this cube. You can see if I put the vertices down, then it becomes blockier. Now there's only 4 sides to the cone. Usually when people do graphics for games, for instance, they try to keep their vertex number down. But then when you do stuff for other things, such as, well, 3D sculpting, then it's not that much of an issue. Also for mobile gaming, you need to have low vertex objects. So I think I'll keep it quite low, but not, okay, maybe 12 vertices would be enough here. Now, let's make it more. Because there was something called smoothing I wanted to show you, and it works better if there are a little bit more vertices. And we'll go see what a vertex is quite soon. Also, I can say what the radius is, so nothing weird in that. So I'm basically happy with this. And then there's the depth. And of course I can say what the location is already here. Okay, so now I'll click away, and also my creation box for now for the cone disappears. So now I can start putting it in place. I want it to be inside the table, holding the table up actually. For a little while, I think I'll make the tabletop invisible because I want to concentrate on the cone. So how to do that? Just by hiding it here in the viewport. By the way, I can also rename these things by double clicking on the name. I can say that this is a tabletop. Anyway, the cone is where I want to. So these views. Now I'm just going closer to the cone by zooming in a little bit. But I could do this in a very precise manner too, by clicking here on the view and taking here the viewpoint. There's the top, bottom, front, back, right and left view. And you can see also the numpad numbers that I can use. So here would be the front. So I can do very precise stuff here if I want to. And now I go closer to it. Okay, let's see. What do I want to do with this? I want to make it a little bit, look a little bit nicer maybe. And maybe I also want to have some sort of base here. So I need to extrude some geometry out of here. And for doing that, for editing, I need to go to edit mode, because now we are in the object mode. You can see the mode over here. And if I click here, you can see which modes this object has right now. There's the edit mode, then there's something called the sculpt mode. Also vertex paint, weight paint, and texture paint. We won't go there in this lesson, but there are really a lot of video tutorials on YouTube, and also in places that I mentioned, like the udemy.com. Anyway, I want to go from object mode to edit mode, and the edit mode looks like this. And by the way, there's also you can also go directly to the edit mode by clicking the tab on your keyboard. Right now it's, by the way, not working. I think it's because of the screen sharing I'm doing. Anyway, in edit mode, you can grab things. I think I'll go back. Okay, there's, by the way, some sort of lag going on right now here. Anyway, I can select things by the vertex. Well, a vertex is one of these points. Each of these vertex objects are made of vertices, and they are and they can be selected in the vertex mode. Also, there's the edges between the vertices, and there's a select mode for that. Like this. And there's a select mode for faces, which are, well, these things. Usually if you have a face made of 3 vertices, it's called a triangle or a tri, TRI. And then when you have a face made of 4 vertices, it's called a quad. And then there's, well, faces that are made of more than 4, then like a mathematical n number, they are called n-gons. So polygon and n-gon. So typically this face is an n-gon. And if I click on the table top, you can see that this consists of mostly quads. Okay, I'll need to go away from the object from the edit mode in order to click on the other object. That's also important to know. If I want to edit the table, I need to first go to the object mode, click on the table, and then go back to edit mode. Now I can manipulate only the table and not this cone, because they are 2 separate objects. And here, by the way, there's also information of how many vertices there are in this object, how many tries, and how many faces, and how many edges. So there are not many vertices here in the tabletop. If I click here, you can see that the cone has more of them. And I go by clicking the tab back to the select mode. And again here, if I click A, I get to select everything of the object. So how to manipulate these? Just like you manipulated the object in the object mode, that you click the part that you want to manipulate, and then you do what you do with it. I use this transform tool also a lot here. Right now I could move this around like this, and yes, I can notice usually the blender is not this slow, so there's a visible lag, not lag. Anyway. Okay. Yeah, it seems that the tools are not working quite as I want them to, but it doesn't matter. The tabletop Okay, so what I wanted to do was I wanted to have like some sort of base here. So I want to do it with a technique called extruding, which is very often used. And for that, I would need to first select all the vertices, or all the edges here at the edge of the cone. I could go on doing it in the in this panel with my shift key pressed, but that's a bit tedious. So there's luckily a way that I can just click on everything. Well, of course I could have just clicked on this face, but I wanted to show you this method because so I can select this whole loop, edge loop that is called, by just clicking on Alt key and then clicking on one edge. So if the loop is whole, then it will be selected. So now I'm in the edge select mode, by the way. So how to do the extrusion. So there is a button for this, extrude region, but I can also do it by simply clicking E, and then I can just take this down like this. And the lag is now making this really interesting. Anyway, now I can move the items, except that for some reason it doesn't let me move anything. I think the program is somehow stuck. Also, I can use the S key to increase the size here. Okay, the moving does really not work. So I guess I'll have to try quitting the Blender and starting it again. Well, this scene didn't have anything very precious, so I don't even save it. I'll create a new scene. So usually Blender is quite reliable these days, which is why I'm thinking that the Zoom screen sharing and recording might be playing tricks here. Anyway, yeah, this is an add-on that I have put here that I can find models and take ready-made textures. It's called Blender Kit, and you can find it online. So it's quite handy if you need to get a texture very quickly or a model. Yeah, that's one thing, that the internet is full of 3D models these days. People are just loading them there and you can use them. Okay, so back to where I was. So if I try out if the resizing is now working again. Yes, it's working. Good. Already had some. There we go. There's the tabletop. And now I'll create the cone again. And I'll just be happy with the cone that I got. Let's get a little bit closer. Okay, somebody's sending me a lot of emails. Okay, by the way, I wanted to show you the smoothing thing. If you want to shade things smooth, you can go here to Object and click Shade Smooth, and it will make it look smoother. But let's go back to Shade Flat. Anyway, I'll go to the Edit mode and I'll do a quick face select and extrude this region. And yes, now it's working. Great. And another thing I wanted to show you is here. It's called a loop cut, because I want to make a cut here in the middle, or a couple of them, and make it look more stylish. I could use this loop cut button and do it, but I will rather okay, now it's plugging again. Okay, something is not working as it should. So it's not giving me a proper loop cut. This kind of loop cut makes no sense at all, but let's just click it on and then take it away. Ah, I see what's the trouble here. The cone that I did had like the wrong kind of top, but doesn't matter. I'll make the loop cut over here, and then okay, there we go. Again, as I have the loop cut, I can say how many numbers of cuts I need. And now I can just, if I want to, I can Alt select any of these loop cuts. Okay, now it wants me to make loop cuts all the time, which is very strange. Okay, it seems to be stuck in making loop cuts, so I'll go away and, right. Okay, so let's go a little bit closer and I'll Alt select one of these loops. And then I will just put it up. And now it has given me some loop cuts that I didn't want. Okay, I'll delete the whole thing by clicking X and start. I think I'll start with a cylinder this time because the cones are giving me some headaches. Okay, here's the cylinder, and I'll make it into a cone-like structure by making this smaller. So I think I'll have less trouble with the geometry like this. Making the tabletop invisible again, clicking E and making this here. Then clicking a loop cut by clicking Control and R. This way I don't have to bother with the loop cut tool. Control and R. Now I can change the place where the loop cut will be, or say that I want to have more than one loop cut, maybe like this. Then I alt click one of these loops, click S to make it smaller, alt click this one, click S to make it smaller, and again alt clicking this one, clicking S. By the way, it looks like a traffic cone right now. So maybe I'll just move this loop cut a little bit, like this. Okay. So I think I'm happy with this, and I'll make the tabletop visible. And I need to make this object, or I want to make this object shade smooth. Also, I want to make the lights better and give a little bit of color to these objects. But I think I first need to scale this object a little bit. I'm now in the object mode. And put the tabletop on top of it. And I guess I need a couple more of these. Because the tabletop is now looking too massive. Okay, this is better. Then I could go here and move this over here. And duplicate it. This duplication is an important technique. I want to show it to you. So you duplicate stuff. Where do I find it here? Okay, so I usually use the Shift and D for duplication, but you can also find it from here, duplicate objects. There are other interesting things here, like how to make things snap to grids and stuff. and mirroring things. But anyway, now I want to duplicate the objects, and I have to click the Shift D and click Enter to make it happen. And now it's in the same place than the original, so I need to move it. I'm doing this in the dirty way and just making an optical control that it's somehow where it should be. Okay, now I have these cylinders on the tabletop, and I'll give them a little bit of color and make the scene a little bit more interesting in other ways. For instance, there could be some sort of floor. So I'll click Shift and A and create a plane for the floor, and then scale it up. To have a kind of room. And maybe scale a little bit down. It's a bit big now. So okay, I think I'll stop here with the size of the floor. Could be bigger though, but it's a start. Okay, I'm going now to the rendered view. And it all looks very boring right now. I'm well aware of that. So let's make it more interesting. Okay, I'll start by giving the tabletop some texture, or not texture, just colors. Let's go with just colors right now. So I can change the base color of the table first. Maybe to something like this. And here's the specular value, by the way, which says how much it reflects things. I could make it shinier by clicking here on the metallic and specular values. And yes, usually this kind of, you can see that it takes a little bit of time to render. This usually doesn't happen with Eevee, but now it's a little bit lagging. Okay, and here's the material that I have created now, and I could use that material again for these cylinders too. So as I'm in the material tab, under this button here, you can find the materials that are already used in the scene, also the textures. So but I have to give a new color for the floor. So I'll click on the plus and change the base color. Maybe a green floor. No. Okay, that's fairly realistic if we're going for realism. Then let's see what can be done with the colors, with the lights, I mean. Because the light is quite boring looking right now. So let's see how it can be changed. I could put this light over the table, maybe like a lamp light over it. And then I could duplicate this light by Shift and D. Usually it's good to have several lights in one scene. That's one of the basic mistakes that people do when they are starting out with 3D, that they are not thinking about light enough. Because usually in the real world there are light sources everywhere, and like daylight is, if it's coming from a window, then it's bouncing off everywhere. So if you're really interested about light, then that's in the 3D world. For instance, in 3D animation, it's a profession of its own to put lights on scenes. And by the way, there is a need for 3D modelers and 3D riggers and 3D lighters in the animation industry right now, in Finland and in other places of the world. And these days you can do much of the work also on your own. So this is just a kind of rant, but I know that in TAMK now, interactive media studies, there are lots of students who come for the first year, and they think that, okay, they will go to work in the game industry, and they are visually very talented and stuff, and all they are thinking about is games. They like to play video games, but they also watch a lot of animations, but somehow they don't think that there might be also jobs in the game animation industry, and there are. Like, there is a big lack of people right now in the Finnish animation industry. Well, industry. It's it could be bigger, by the way. Yeah, but this is one of my usual rants that I do. Anyway, there is need for people who know 3D in the animation industry. That was my point here. Anyway, let's go see how this scene could be made nicer looking. I could just play with the colors of the light here. I could make this light, for instance, bluish. I could change its power. I could try out if a spotlight would be more effective in this scene. A spotlight, of course, is always pointing at some place, like a physical spotlight. So I need to adjust its angle then. Or do I want to have like a sun here, like something that is very, very strong, as you can see. So maybe not, maybe the point light would work better here. But it could have maybe this warm yellow tone anyway. And I could try 2000 watts instead of 1000. and try out the different radius for it. And so on. You can also define if the light is making shadows or not, which is also nice. Anyway, I can also make the area around less gray. This is also just a choice given by the software, this grayish stuff. You can make it either completely invisible, like transparent when you render it, or if you want to render everything, then you can just change it. Yeah, it's the color of the world that we're speaking. There's the little world properties button or window. So here's the color of the world. You can also change the world into like a 360 image, which is called an HDRI image, by changing these nodes. But I'll just click the, like you can see now the world looks brighter. Very a pastel world where pastel things happen. So I'll keep it in the pastel thing. I think I'm in a pastel mood today. Right, it's that time. So I think I'll have a couple of minutes break to drink a little bit. I'm thirsty from this talking. Do you have any questions so far?
Will you go later for the that what is the movie mode or the camera mode? What is the use of that?
Yes, the use of the camera mode is to render the image. Like right now, I took the camera mode. So what you are seeing here, it's just a layout of the picture. When you want to have pictures out of Blender, then you render them, and you do it from the camera mode. You can either do animations or still images, and yeah, maybe I'll show that before I have a break. So to change the camera view is a little bit, well, you can do it by moving the camera, of course, in the scene, but a handy trick for changing it is to go, there's a side panel that I haven't talked to you about. You can find it by clicking N on the keyboard, N like Neil or no. Anyway, there you find this tab called View, and there's this lock camera to view. So now, whether I have the camera selected here or not, the camera view will change when I'm changing my view.
So it's basically just view mode, or?
No, this is, I'll show you what this does. So now this is what the engine will render. So I'll click this away now. Click with N this window away. So here's the render button or render settings. There's the render image and render animation. And we also have render settings over here where there's the, it looks like an old-fashioned printer, output properties. So here I can see the resolution of the rendered image and also change it. I can say if it's doing an animation, where does the frame start and where do they end. Here's the folder where it will put them. Now it's in the temp folder, which I don't want. I want it to go into my images folder. What? There we go. And I'll accept that folder. Okay. Also, I can say if it's a JPEG or what this will be. Okay, I say JPEG. PNG would have been maybe lossless, but now I'm not interested in lossless images. Okay, so then I'll click on the render image. It's also F12. And now it will make a render. And because it's the EV engine, it's a very quick one. With the other one, the cycles engine, it will take a little bit longer. It doesn't look very good yet, so I should be doing a lot of things here. But anyway, under image, I can then save it and give it a name. Table. So this is one way of getting things out of here by rendering them.
Okay, thank you. Now I
Then
I have a clue.
Yeah, there's another way of doing this, and that is by you can export stuff, and then you export them in these 3D formats like OBJ or FBX, for instance. And you can also import models in these OBJ and FBX and other formats. But well, FBX and OBJ are the most used. Okay, but I'll get myself something to drink, just a couple of minutes, and then we'll continue with rendering or modeling a creature. All right, I'm back.
I actually have a question
Good.
about the table. How can you center the leg so it's right in the center of the table? Is there a button you can do to press to center it?
That's, well, what I would do would be to put the tabletop first into the center of the scene, which is with it. So here I would put the X and Y location into 0, which it is already. Then I would also put the location of this into 0, which it is, by the way, already, or it was before I put it there. So there are a couple of ways of doing this, and there's also information that you can find in tutorials about aligning things to each other. Usually people use these snapping functions for aligning objects, but that is one of the weaknesses, I think, of Blender, that it doesn't have this sort of aligning tools, like, for instance, you can find in with Adobe software, or the Affinity, or in even in well, Autodesk Maya or Max. So you have to use slightly different techniques for that.
Okay.
Okay, but I'll make the table and the plane now invisible, because I want to create a dog. And for that I will start with a cube. Okay, and actually I have drawn an image beforehand, so I know a little bit of what kind of a dog I'm going to do, and how I'm going to do it from this cube. But I think I'll go to the solid mode, or to do what I'm doing. So first I'm starting with the big blocks, and then I'm going to the details from there. So this is going to be the dog's main body. With the head over here, and the tail over there, and the legs down there. And I'm going to use a little bit of mirroring to make this work. Okay, that's where my dog is going to start. So I need to go into the edit mode, and I need to start making these loop cuts. So another way of doing this, to make more geometry, by the way, would be to go to here to edge and click Subdivide. I'm not going to use this here, but I wanted to show you what Subdivide does. So it gives you more geometry to play with. So if you need Oh, by the way, I think I could use this. Yeah, I think I'll just use these subdivisions. Oh, by the way, if you need really smooth corners quickly, then you can do it here in the subdivision, like this. Put the smoothness up. Anyway, I'm not going to do that now. Just put that back to 0. I'll make the dog smooth later on. Okay, so I'm going to do more loop cuts as I go, but right now I'm quite happy with these. So let's go and create the legs. So like I said, I'm going to first do the big shapes and then go to the smaller shapes from there. So there we go. And I will extrude the legs. And I'll make a second extrusion. And maybe a third one also. Then what I need is the head. And I think I'll draw it out from here. Or maybe I'll alt-click this edge loop and I'll put it a little bit downwards so that the head can come out from this here. So again, extrude, and I see that the symmetry is held. Then another extrude. This time I'll also click S for making it a little bigger. Another extrude. One more. And extrude. And I'm starting to scale them so that there's something vaguely resembles a dog's snout. And then I will need a tail. And I'll do this from here, but I first need to put this a little bit upwards. And I'll start the tail from that face by extruding it. I could also extrude just edges or even vertices, by the way. And I'll resize this one, extrude, and resize. Maybe I'll raise it already. So there's the very basic shape of the dog. And now what I'm going to do is start changing the shapes so that they look better or more dog-like. Also, it will need ears and stuff. So here I'll shift-click to get all of these selection modes on at the same time. And what I also need is for the symmetry axis to work. I'll just need to see if it's the x-axis that I need to. Yes. So as long as the object is symmetrical, the mirroring will work. There's also other ways of doing the mirroring, but this is the easiest one at this point. Anyway, so just making it more dog-like, shoulders, and usually a creature's spine goes in an S-shaped form right over here. Then what I need to do is put the sides down as well. Usually it's not a good idea to change the shape of a quad too much, because you can get into all kinds of trouble. It's also possible to, by clicking X, to just delete vertices or pods or anything, and then you can make new ones. That's also usually not very much recommended to do. So maybe I'll show quickly what to do if you have accidentally or by design taken a face away, and then you need to make it whole again. So if I click now X and this comes up, it's asking me what I want to delete. I want to delete the face here. So now now the dog has a hole in its middle. So I could make it whole again by clicking on all of these edges and clicking on F. Now it's whole again. But I hope this didn't break my symmetry. No, it didn't. Anyway, you can see that the legs need quite a lot of work, so I'm going to get to those right now. Here we go. Slowly starting to look better. So we'll probably have to extrude pour out over here. For this, I'll need to yeah, that looks better. And over here, let's see if I need to do. There we go. And extrude this one. Also put the dog's tummy a little bit out. And then resize this one. Okay. It's rotating, not scaling. Oh, I just scale it with directly on the x-axis by clicking S and X. Okay, I don't know why it's not doing what it should, but yeah, there's something gone wrong with this part. I don't know what. I've probably made a mistake somewhere. Anyway, the legs are too wide from the front, so I need to change that. And I also need to make them flatter here and this edge here. So you notice that it takes a little bit of time and patience to get this done. So to make things faster, I'll just show you the dog I did very quickly yesterday. So this. It's a Blender file. And there's my dog from yesterday. Yesterday's dog. So what I did with this was, let's take this modifier away and you understand what I did then. So this is how the dog originally looks like. And this is how it looks like when I put the shade smooth option there. I can shade it flat whenever I want to. But I wasn't really happy with the dog. So I added a modifier there, which gave it more geometry. And this is something I wanted to show you also, what modifiers are. So you can find them here where there's this wrench type thing. And at first it looks like the most boring place in the world, like there's literally nothing, until you click here on the menu, add modifier. And there is like vast collection of these things that you can add to your object or things that you can do with your object. And what I'm now interested in is something called either multi-resolution or subdivision surface. They both give more geometry. There's also ways to lessen the geometry if you want that by clicking decimate. And with array, I could make like 50 dogs. So it's a very quick way of copying stuff, the array. Anyway, right now I'm interested in the subdivision surface modifier. There we go. And you can see already that it's looking better. I can here change the amount of subdivisions. Now it's showing 2 when it's rendering, but in the viewport it's showing just 1. So this is closer to what it looks in the rendered mode. Okay, it's very shiny. Oh, not anymore. Anyway, I could also put optimal display here and change it. It's smooth. It's so these are just like adjustment layers in Photoshop or in Affinity Photo or as well, so that they don't actually, the modifiers don't do anything to the original geometry unless you apply them. Just like you would apply an adjustment layer and then make the changes permanent. You can apply a modifier. Here, this is the apply button. So I usually do it by the end when I export the thing that I want to export. So if I now go to edit mode, I can see through this modifier that, okay, the original object is still, the original mesh is still there. But if I go to wireframe with the Z button, then I can see how what the modifier would do to the mesh, how it would change it. If I click more subdivisions, then it will change it even smoother. Let's see. It's also making it shrink a little bit whenever you do this. But I think 2 subdivisions are okay with this dog. So now if I apply this, apply modifier and go to edit mode, now this is what the dog looks like, or the mesh actually. And I could export this mesh now as an OBJ or FBX, and then open it up in some other 3D modeling software or some other software that takes on 3D models. So you can see that it takes a lot of different, that it exports in many different file formats. There's OBJ that I was talking about, and there's FBX. Both are quite reliable. FBX also exports animations. If you have done some animations here in Blender and you want to take an animated object to, let's say, a game engine like Unity, then that's where it works very nicely. So let's take it out as an FBX, and now I need to tell the program that I only want to export the selected object, which is the mesh. And my dog was the selected object here. Okay, and I don't have any animation there, so I don't need to bake any animation. So just export the mesh as the fast dog. Okay, before we go into the day task that you have, I wanted to show one more thing. And that was how to import ready-made things into Blender. I put a couple of human characters that I did on Fuse and Mixamo earlier into the course modal. And you can try importing them into your scene as well. So I'll import them now here. I think they were FBX. Okay, there it is. Because there's a dark-skinned woman that I did in this Adobe Fuse. So it's a program that where you can use these ready-made templates and then combine them together and then get your own human characters. And then there's you can take those to something called an online software called Mixamo, which is owned by Adobe. And the Mixamo will put rigging there, which means that it has bones. So I don't want to import any animation because it also doesn't have any. There are a couple of problems with these Mixamo Fuse meshes, and you'll notice them as soon as it's loading. Okay, there it is. Well, this is some of the smaller problems that is quite small, so I click S and scale it a little bit. This is quite usual when you take meshes from one program to another, that the size is not, that the size changes. Okay, here you can see these strange things that are sticking out of the woman are the bones or the rigging, so to say. I'll make a rendered version. And there you can see the woman. And now if I don't want to see the armature in the scene, I can make it, I can hide it like this. But you can see that the body is actually inside this armature. So it has been parented there. So whatever the bones do, the mesh follows. So let's try that out. We need to go, for that we need to go to something that is called the pose mode. So when I have selected the bones, this armature, I can go here and it shows me pose mode. And now I can click on any of these bones, for instance this one. Oh, by the way, I'll go to viewport display and make the bones visible by clicking here, this in front button. So now I can rotate these bones and at the same time, of course, rotate the character like this. So if I wanted to have this woman sit by the table, then I would have to rotate the bones so that she would sit in a comfortable position. There's also, when you do real, so-called real rigging for animated characters and characters in general, there's these constraints that you can put on bones that they don't go more than the anatomy allows. But these don't have any constraints right now. So you can make them move anywhere. Okay. Usually a person looks more natural if their head is not quite straight, if it's a little bit on the side and such. And the same goes for the body. If you just rotate the body a little bit, it looks more natural. And yes, you can also animate all of this movement. But as this is not an animation course, I will not go into that. So yes. Now what I could do would be, I could save this as a Blender scene and then open it up later on. By the way, that the character is looking so shiny is one of the mistakes that I should correct here. We didn't have time to go into those things, into shadings and stuff, but yeah, like I said, if you're interested, there are lots and lots of tutorials on this topic of how to use Blender and how to use 3D in general. Anyway, I'll go to our course page now. to the Moodle page, and let's put your date task there. It's always giving this error, and then it still goes where it should go. Turn editing on. And there's the 3D people folder that I added. And let's add the date task. Okay. Using Blender 3D. Like, okay, so remember to play with the colors and lights to make the scene look appealing. Okay, and I'll stop the sharing quite soon. Okay, but change this to, well, the scene shouldn't be very big, but I'll change this anyway. So you probably noticed that it says human or animal character. So you can either make that animal yourself, or then like make a dog or some other animal, or then use those ready-made humans, or use both if you want to. So there's quite a lot of space for interpretation of this task. And I'll stop the screen sharing now. And I'll stop the recording.